Hi guys, welcome to the archive. So guys, in the last few videos I showed you how to make a modular temple, the core walls and battlements of the system, the towers and the gate, along with the removable modular doors, trapdoors and secret doors that work with them. You can make these in any order and even go back and make more to expand what you can do with them later. Most of this stuff can also be used separately, so the tiles and stairs and so on can be used as part of building a dungeon or as just part of a, building. As I've mentioned again and again though, this project is designed to be as simple or as complex as you yourself want to make it. You can make as much or as little of it as you want. If you haven't seen it already, I've also made a video earlier in this playlist where I go through all the different ways you can use this terrain from these videos, including some scenario ideas. So let me know in the comments if that's the kind of thing you found useful and if you'd like to see more of them. Now for what are probably the most useful accessories, the torches. These are really easy to make and they only need a few easy to find things. To make each one, you'll need one piece of 1/4 inch width balsa wood strip or lollipop stick cut down to 1/4 inch thick. You want to cut this down to 5/8 of an inch in length. You'll also need 2 pieces of cocktail stick about 1 inch long. Make sure these don't include the sharp bit. You'll also need 1 inch of 1mm thick wire and a small strip of kitchen roll. To get that rough cut appearance to the torch handle, take the blunt cocktail stick and cut random strips off it to make it seem rough cut. Once you have that, we can wrap a strip of kitchen roll around the top and glue it in place. PVA will probably do, but superglue is faster and easier, so I used superglue. You'll then need to take some of that flat balsa wood strip for the wall fixing and drill a hole using a pin vise just a little below the top of the wall fixing itself. Then we need to grab the wire. Pinch the end with a pair of needlenose pliers and wrap it around, and then bend out and straight to form the metal holder like this. Once we've got the shape, we can cut it to about 1/2 inch long in total and push it through the hole. Then you just need to superglue it in place from behind and cut away any excess. Once you've got that, put the torch in the holder and make sure it can be angled to poke into the bottom of the wall holder. If not for some reason, you can bend the wire slightly until it will. Then we need to drill a hole for it at the right angle. A good way to do this is to put the drill through the wire hoop while you're drilling. If you need to, cut the hole a little wider until the torch manages to slot in properly, and then just superglue it in place. You can also bend the wire to make sure it fits. You'll then want to cut a 45-degree angle on the end of the other cocktail stick. If this isn't the first accessory you've made, compare the angle to one of your others. What's most important is that all of your accessories and slots match, not that it's a perfect 45-degree angle. Once you've done that, you can put it into one of your wall sockets and make sure the angle is right. Like I said before, the angle being dead on isn't important, being the same as all of the others that you've made is. Once you're happy with it, superglue it to the middle of the back of the torch. Once it's dry, you can trim it down so that it sticks out just under 1/2 inch at most. This is so that it won't poke through any walls in any of my future builds that you might want to use it with. Finally, we need to use a hot glue gun to sculpt some flames over the torch cloth. To do this, wrap the glue around the cloth, leaving the bottom visible, before drawing the glue outwards and blowing gently to cool it. It's a good idea to practice this technique a bit on some spare cocktail sticks, though if you mess up you can just cut the glue off and start again. Any torn pieces of kitchen roll won't be visible anyway. Not to mention this technique looks better when you get varied results as it is. As you can see, I am okay at this technique. I'm fairly confident some of you will actually be better. Once that's complete, you just need to paint the wood in the same colours as we have for the doors in the tower video and gate video previously. I'll link the tower video in the description. I painted the cloth in a tan, in this case Rakarth flesh. The flame I painted with a base coat of Aerial Yellow, which is a golden yellow, and highlighted up with a 50-50 mix of Aerial Yellow and Troll Slayer, which is a strong orange. I then used some pure Troll Slayer before finally doing a 50-50 mix of Troll Slayer and Corn Red, which is a dark red. If you don't use these exact paints, it doesn't matter, but at least this gives you a reference point for the types of yellows, oranges and reds that I used. Each highlight here was painted with the paint thinned down by water just a little bit more than you usually would to allow the previous layers to show through just slightly. When painting each of these layers, I painted thin, sharp tongues of darker flame pointing down, which helps add more of a realistic look to the colours rather than just layers of flat lines. Finally, I finished them off by painting the bottom of the flame in a 50-50 mix of Aerial Yellow and white to add a bit more brightness to it. However you decide to paint the flame, torches are often a key part of RPGs, if for no other reason than they determine what can actually be seen. I think these are a great little way for you to show your players which part of the scene are actually lit, and which enemies are least likely to see the rogue slipping past. Time for a more grimdark and metal accessory. The blood-stained gibbet. Anyway, to make it you'll need 13 1-inch long cocktail sticks, 12 1.5-inch long cocktail sticks, some modelling or jewellery chain, some 5mm or so jewellery rings, a 1-inch cube of foam with the corners cut in on one side, and 4 more cocktail sticks with some card for the framework. Oh, and some blue tack. For the pole, you'll need 2 foam beams, which are 3/8 of an inch thick. You'll want one 2.5 inches long and another 1.5 inches long. You'll also want one 1/4 inch thick foam beam, 1 inch long to be the support beam. To start off, I built a quick framework with card, blue tack and some other cocktail sticks to build on. This keeps the super glue off your workstation. Ridiculously important if you're working on the kitchen table and would rather not be shouted at or regret your life choices. You want the 2 center cocktail sticks about 1/4 inch apart, just enough to keep the middle bars stable. The edge pieces you want again about 1/4 inch apart, the idea being that they hold the side bars up without touching the bits covered in horrendously sticky superglue. I then placed the first 1-inch piece and superglued 4 1-inch pieces horizontally to it. Let it dry and then place the closing 1-inch piece. This can be a little tricky, but if a clumsy idiot like me can do it, you can do it. Trust me. Don't worry if one of your bars doesn't quite match up. If you use thick superglue, which you will want to, it will be able to bridge the gap for you and fill it almost like putty. Or you could, use putty. If it looks a bit thin once dry, add a bit more glue, or putty. When dry, it should just look like battered metal. Once you have one of these pieces, we need to rinse and repeat so that you have 2. I ended up adding another cocktail stick to my little framework here to help with the balance, which you can do from the start and save yourself some annoyance. Once those are dry, put one of the finished pieces on the framework to make sure it doesn't glue to the table. Then grab the 1-inch cube of foam. Rest the cut side against the 2 middle bars and clamp 4 of the 1.5-inch bars in place to the sides with blue tack. These need to attach directly above the 2 side bars and follow the line of the cube smoothly to make sure that they're at straight right angles. Once they're safely in place, we need to glue the joints with superglue. Double check once you've put the pieces and glue in place that your bars are actually still straight. You might need to nudge them a little bit if you are clumsy like me. When that's dry, you can make sure that you can take the foam out and that it hasn't glued to the bars. Then you'll want to place it back in and glue the final 1.5-inch cocktail stick pieces using blue tack again to hold them in place. To get the last 4 pieces to fit, you'll need to either cut down the cube by 1/16 of an inch on 2 of its sides, or have a second one ready that is already cut down if you wanted to keep the original the same size for building another gibbet. This is so that you can have the extra width when it's useful to keep the initial 4 bars straight, but the space when you needed to attach the other final 4. At this point, if you have a suitable mini you'd like to glue inside, like a sacrifice to the crafting gods, you can paint one up and glue him in, though I would heavily advise the painting bit before the gluing bit. It would probably also be a good idea to skip to the painting section for the cage itself and paint most of it up before connecting the roof. Make sure you leave the connecting points unpainted until it's glued and paint those up last. I don't have a suitable mini right now, and I'm also skint, so I'm a little bit gutted because even when I was younger I loved including minis like this. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to make another gibbet later. What a shame. Anyway, once it's dry we can remove the blue tack and foam cube and glue the roof on. If the roof doesn't quite fit, we can trim the longer cocktail sticks carefully as much as we need to with an X-Acto knife until it fits smoothly. I'd recommend only gluing those bars that you are confident of the positioning of. You can always glue others that seem to line up well after placing the roof on. If any of your bars are sticking out slightly despite your best efforts, like a few of mine are here, wait until the others are dry and then push those in one by one and hold in place while they glue. It's easy enough to do this while chilling watching YouTube and lying to yourself that you're being productive. At least that's what I did. Now we have our gibbet, we need something to hang it from. To start, we'll need to trim the edges of the pieces of XPS foam. Then use a wire brush to carve a wood grain into each side, and stab the grain into the ends to provide a rough wood finish. There's only really a point in stabbing the 1.5" piece. The rest will pretty much have things glued to them. Brushing harder will fairly obviously give you a deeper grain. Whether you want your wood with worn looking deep grains is up to you. I went with some moderately deep grains, which took about 3 to 6 strong passes with the thin side of the wire brush. I don't trim the edges every time I do this to give some variety to the pieces. It makes some of the beams look older and some newer, which I thought was cool when it came out like that. You'll then need to hot glue the 1.5" XPS piece to the top of the 2.5" piece, like this, and then cut down the ends of the 1/4" piece at 45° angles and hot glue in position as the support beam. Once you've got the shape right, we need to line up the beam with the accessory slots and insert a sharp cocktail stick into the rear of the beam at the right height and at a 45° angle. This should be just above 1 inch from the bottom of the beam. You'll want to test the hole as appropriate and push it at least halfway through. Then take that final 1 inch cocktail stick piece that you thought I'd forgotten about and push it into the hole. You'll probably want to glue it in place with superglue to make sure it's secure. Yes, this will slightly melt the foam at the back, but you don't see the foam at the back, so it's kind of worth it for the strong bond. You'll want about 1/2 inch sticking out of the back when you're done. If there's more than this, it's easy enough to trim it with a knife. You'll probably want to paint the gibbet and beam before assembly for rather obvious dangly reasons. I was really clever and actually made this mistake with my prototype. It was a complete pain in the ass to paint. You can use the same wood paint scheme that we used for the torches for the beam, with a coat of thinned down Mod Podge first to seal the foam. Before you Mod Podge it up, I found it was a good idea to stroke your foam like you have some kind of creepy obsession. The aim, of course, being to remove any loose foam that would get pushed back into the cracks by the Mod Podge and then seal up some of those lovely wood grains. The gibbet needs a thick coat of Mod Podge. We actually kind of want a knobbled, bumpy look here. The more we blot out the wood grain of the cocktail sticks, the better. Once that's done, paint it with a coat of an acrylic mix of 2 parts raw sienna to 1 part raw umber. I tried to speed this up by using Mournfang Brown and I regretted it by the end. The tone is a little too dark for rust in my opinion. What you want is a nice orangey brown mix, ideally on the lighter side. If you want to really go for it, you can also dry brush it with a slightly brighter browny orange to give that kind of mottled look. Then it needs a patchy job of dry brushing with a metallic paint like gunmetal. Getting a good rusty look means a messy job here is actually good. You want it to be random, thicker in some places, more scratchy in others. Finally, we need to open and bend those 5mm rings into place looped around the four corners of the top of the gibbet, with some chain links looped through the loops. After that, you'll want to connect the four chains to a single ring in the same way, but at the middle above the gibbet. I found it was easier to connect the chains to the top ring by cutting them to the right length first, which in my case was about 9 chain links. You want it to join in the middle, about ½ an inch above the top of the gibbet, so it dangles and doesn't touch the ground. I also found it helped a lot to hold the rings using needlenose pliers rather than my fingers, so if you are struggling, give that a try, it really helps. Once that's all connected, we just need to connect a final ring piece to the beam. You want to bend a ring, or a piece of wire for that matter, until it looks like a hook. Once you've got that, you can attach it to the beam above using superglue again for that strong bond. Using this hook allows you to remove the gibbet and hang other things from this post, or create alternative posts to hang the gibbet from. Again, this is a little fiddly, but I'm clumsy as hell, so if I can do it, you can too. Probably better for that matter. If you want the chain to stay where it's told, you can superglue the corners of the chain in position. I found that this helps me from having to fiddle with the thing and stops it going a little wonky. Once it's all attached, just paint the chain in a metal colour, give it a brown wash, I used strong tone, and add any blood effects. For the blood effects, I used blood for the blood god. Two cool little things you can do here are paint thin lines to show where prisoners grabbed the bars with their bloody hands, and then show the blood dribbling down the bars. Overall, this is quite a nice little piece to put together. It doesn't take very long for each section, as long as you have something to do while the glue dries, and let's face it, if you're in this hobby, you're not short of things you can be doing while glue is drying. Now finally, for what is probably my favourite accessory for its sheer flexibility, the banner. I posted one of these downloadable banners that I made on Photoshop as a PDF for free on Patreon, and as another thank you to my patrons, I've spent some time making a few more that they can download as well. They should work well for a medieval setting. There are also variants of each one with crowns on, so you can show on the banner who is currently king or queen if you ended up using this heraldry, which I thought was kind of cool. If I get enough interest on Patreon, I'm more than happy to whip up a few more variants of these for patrons, maybe even some other symbols and factions if I can manage it. Anyway, I'll stop getting distracted. To make the banner, you'll need a 3/8 of an inch thick foam beam. You want it to be 2 15/16 of an inch tall. This might seem specific, and that's because it is. It's to stop it catching on the battlement support triangles. You'll also need a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 3/8 of an inch foam piece, a 1 11/16 of an inch cocktail stick, and a 1 inch cocktail stick. And of course for the banner, you'll need a piece of paper 5.5 inches long and 1.5 inches wide, with a cutout square of 1 inch by 1/2 an inch in the middle. You'll also need some tinfoil. As usual, the thicker, more expensive stuff is a little bit better here, but you can probably get away with the cheap stuff. It's a fairly straightforward build. First we just need to brush the wood grain into the beam and the other foam piece like we did for the gibbet post. Once you have your textured pieces, hot glue the small piece to the big piece, with the longer edge horizontal so that it lines up with the post. Then take an unmolested cocktail stick and push it through the centre of the small piece to create a hole. Then take it out and push through your 1 11/16 of an inch cocktail stick in. It's that precise, mainly so that the banner will fit perfectly. Then take your other cocktail stick and line up the connection piece much as we did for the gibbet post. Finally, cut a piece of tinfoil to fit within the banner and tacky glue the thing together. With the tinfoil inside, we can reshape the banner whenever we like, and it should retain its shape better. If you want to, you can also make an alternative version that you can attach higher on walls, using the smaller foam piece and by cutting the large post to 1.5 inches. If you glue them together horizontally like this and connect 2 cocktail sticks in the back like this, you'll have a banner pole that you can attach to the sides of towers and all sorts, which is an awesome little thing to have lying around that only takes 5 minutes to make. Finally, give the foam parts a quick coat of Mod Podge and then paint the banner pole and beams as we have the other wood, and put your banner on. Again, I think this is quite a useful piece of flavourful terrain that is really flexible for adding variety to all kinds of terrain that you can use over and over and over again. I hope this video was useful to you guys and that you get a lot out of these accessories. If so, maybe hit subscribe and hit the bell too if you want to make sure that you see any of the future videos. Do you have an idea to make these accessories better? Mention it in the comments. I love anything that can make my future builds more useful. That's all from me for now. Until next time, I'll be in the archive.